My name is Sharon Evans. I do go by Chappelle. I am 43 years old. I live currently in Duncanville, Texas. And the story I'm going to tell is how I was molested by my father for many, many years and how it has shaped me into the person that I am today. Before the abuse started, I was born to a woman who I don't believe was ready to be a mother at that time. So therefore, I was raised for the first part of my life by my loving grandparents who took wonderful care of me. I mean, they gave me the best life they could. And then my father, who I was told was in jail, got out and came and got me from my grandparents' house. Kind of that's how the ball of abuse started with him. Maybe not straight away. So I was living at my grandparents, and no, my mom was kind of off doing her own thing. So she wasn't necessarily present for the first few years of my life. And then, my dad kind of came at nighttime and was like, pack up a suitcase, you're coming with me. And my grandparents were kind of like, well, there's really nothing we can do because he's your dad, so you have to go with him. And that's kind of how that happened. In that moment, and granted, I was very, very young, so I only remember pieces, like flashes of it, but I do remember the feeling of being scared because I didn't know him, and my grandfather more so was just trying to console me as if everything is going to be okay, you're going to go with him, and this is your dad and things are going to be fine. But my grandparents had no idea that it was not in fact going to be fine. I was 5 years old when my dad first came to get me, very young. So my first experiences with my father was kind of bouncing around. We went from woman's house to woman's house. He had quite a few ladies in his life. There was drugs involved. I did witness my father shooting up many a times. We would be in the car. I would witness drug deals. We would go to hotel rooms. Sometimes we slept in the car. My first experience with him was not the greatest. I ended up going back to my grandparents' house because my dad ended up finding himself into some more trouble. If there was abuse going on at that point when I was so young, like 5, I don't remember that part of it. It wasn't until my dad came back into my life that the sexual abuse started that I can vividly remember. So I went back to my grandparents because my dad got himself into some trouble. He went back to jail. And then, so I was with my grandparents, and then my dad's brother, my uncle, and my mom came and got me, and we moved to Lewisville, Texas. And then when my dad got out of jail, he moved in with us there, and as well as my younger sister at the time. And that's when the abuse started. So my mom and my dad's brother ended up getting together and falling in love with each other. That in itself was not a horrible thing because my dad's brother, my uncle, was very loving and he was a great man. That connection, them being together was not necessarily weird to me because I loved him dearly and he loved me, not even just as a niece, but as like a daughter. He was the best father figure ever. And that my dad being his brother, when he got out of jail, of course, he wants to help his brother out. And he let him come and stay in the apartment with us in Lewisville. And that's when the abuse happened. I'm not quite sure how that all took place and what kindled that or what started that. I know that my uncle was a very big part of my life from the moment that I was born. So I don't know, maybe something had kindled there. Part of me believed maybe that he did in fact get involved with her because of myself and my sister. He wanted to give us a father figure, if that makes sense. And then kind of, my biological mother was the extra piece, the package or the whole package deal, So I think maybe that might have been it, taking up the slack for his brother that wasn't a very good dad. I remember going to visit my father when he was in jail right before he got out, and then he ended up getting out. Now, I was very young, so I don't know if it was paroling out or how that happened, but he did come to stay in the apartment that we lived in. Myself and my younger sister shared a room, and there was no other place for him to stay. So he ended up getting one twin bed, and then me and my sister had another twin bed on the other side of the room. I don't think that him staying in the room kind of gave me weird vibes because, again, at this time, there hadn't been no abuse or anything to freak me out. So I think that, for me, I was just like, my dad is sharing a room with us. Like the way that it was presented was he needs a place to stay. He's kind of bad on his luck and here's where he's going to stay. So the first night that it ever happened, he came and got me out of the bed and then put me in the bed with him. He did not have any pants on and he took my panties off. He laid me on top of his chest and put his private parts between my legs and kind of held my legs shut and then moved me up and down in a motion until he was finished and he ejaculated. And then I kind of just laid there for a second because he didn't just push me off at that moment. I kind of laid there for a little bit and, he kind of, caressed my hair. And then I was like, I need to use the restroom. And then I went to the restroom. And when I returned, I got back in my bed. I remember it just wanting to go to sleep, just wanting to go to bed. I didn't understand. I couldn't process. I was very young, what was going on. And this happened every single night that we lived there in Louisville. We lived in Louisville with him living with us for, 6 months, maybe 8, 9 months, but till we moved to Garland, Texas. And he then came with us there as well. In Garland, he had his own room and I had my own room, but he still would come and get me out of my room and bring me into his room. It didn't take me very long to understand that this felt nasty. I did not like this. I never said anything to anybody, but I do remember having a sense of, remember I have a younger sister who is 4 years younger than me, 3.5, almost 4. So I remember wanting to protect her from him. So I did have that sense that I didn't want this to happen to her, but he never did anything with her. Even to this day, she says nothing ever happened. Like he never did anything to her. So I'm grateful for that. But then we moved to Garland and my sister goes back to live with my grandparents, for educational purposes and the schooling that was there for her and her special needs. And it just continued to happen there with my dad. And I mean, every single night that I stayed in that house, he would come and get me out of my room. He would make me lay on top of him or he would make me spoon with him. Now, he never penetrated me with his private, but he would penetrate me with his digits, with his fingers. That was it. And that lasted up until I was 11. Before I started finding my voice with him. And again, no one knew what was going on in the house. It was a very good secret that me and him kept. He would tell me things like, nobody's going to believe you. No man is ever going to love you. I'm the only man that's ever going to find you attractive. And he also bought my love. That was one red flag that I wish other people would have saw, but I was literally spoiled by him. When school started, I got all my new clothes from the mall, season passes to Wet n Wild, money if I wanted it. Like he literally was buying my silence. And we were poor. So for me, it was like I liked these gifts, but it came at a price. And that price was my body. I remember sitting outside on a stool in the driveway, very close to the garage, and my uncle was working on a car. He was, literally in the hood working on it. I kept saying the words over in my mind, over and over and over again. What triggered me to want to tell was that my dad had disciplined me. He yelled at me for writing on my sister's folder. It was something so small. And he was like, don't touch her stuff again. And I was going outside and I wasn't even listening to him because in my mind, I'm like, how dare you get on to me with what you're doing to me? So I went to leave out. He jumped up off the couch and slammed my fingers into the door. I was opening it. And I looked at him straight in his face. And I said, don't ever touch me again. You are not my dad. You will never be a father to me. And get off of my hand. I walked outside. I sat in the stool and I kept playing. I said to myself that enough is enough. Not only are you doing these things to me, but now you have the nerve to try to discipline me. I just wasn't having it. I'm saying it over and over again. The words to say. I'm closing my eyes and I just let my mouth say the words, which was, Gilbert has been molesting me since we lived in Louisville. And my uncle stood straight up out of that hood, turned around to me. And again, I'm in an elevated stool. So we're like face to face. He walked right up to me and grabbed me by my shoulders and said, "What did you just say to me?" And I said, "Gilbert has been touching me since we lived in Louisville, and it hasn't stopped. He does it every single night." My uncle began to cry and he kept saying, "I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me this? I'm so sorry." He hugged me. At this point, my biological mother comes through the garage and she says, "What is going on?" She was bringing him some iced tea, which is why she was coming out. And he looked at her and said, "Gilbert has been touching on her." And she said, "Don't feel sorry for her. That's what she wants you to do." And he looked at her and said, "What is wrong with you?" He says, "I'm going to off that MF." He marched right into the house up on the porch. I hear a commotion going on behind me. There's a window behind me. And it was almost as if he lunged my dad into the front yard. And he was the little brother. My dad is really tall, really big, and lunged him in the front yard and said, "Don't ever come around my house again. You're never welcome around here again. You're dead to me. How dare you do this?" That was it. Then my dad moved to Michigan with his mom, and that's where that part of it, the abuse, ends for me. I don't know why that was what she chose or how she chose to handle the situation at the time. Perhaps shock, but we did not have the best relationship. Maybe because, she didn't necessarily raise me for the first part. Maybe we didn't have a bond. I don't have answers for her. I have forgiven her for that. Maybe she was in shock. I don't quite know. But I'm glad I had somebody that I could talk to. And I knew it had to be him. With my life and my family dynamic, I knew that he was the only person that I could tell. And I didn't know his reaction would be that way, but I knew that he would listen to me. When I was abducted, he was still living at the house. This was pre me telling what was going on. When I was in the 6th grade, I had middle school, I had a friend that asked me to walk her home. Walking from the school to my house is not a short distance. As a matter of fact, I'm a bus rider and should have been on a bus that day. But, it's my friend. I didn't want her to walk by herself. I walked her to her apartment. I watched her go into the door, and then I go, I'm on the main road, and I'm actually very, very close to my house when a white van pulls up and asks me for directions. And I remember it was like an old, that old stereotypical white beat up van that, the stranger danger van. That's exactly what he drove. And he was a Hispanic male. He was trying to ask me for directions. I was on the sidewalk over here. He's over this way. I couldn't hear him because the van was so raggedy. So he motioned me to come over, and I opened up the door. I can still hear it. That door, that old rusty door noise. I opened up that door, and he snatched me from my backpack and pulled me into the van and drove off. The door shut behind. I'm in the back of this van. There's no seats, no anything. It's down to the metal. And I remember in my mind, first I was in shock. I couldn't scream or anything. And I remember that van made a left, and had we just made a right, I would have been right at my house. And the windows were blacked out. I couldn't see where we were going. For 3 days, this man kept me, sexually assaulted me, beat me. He slept in the van. And then when he was done with me, he let me go. And my family didn't look for me because during this time, of course, I was being abused by my father. So I ran away a lot, because to be away from the house, he couldn't hurt me. So they assumed this was another one of those times where I'd ran away and I would just come home. They had no idea that I had actually been abducted walking home from school. I told my grandmother, which is my dad's mom. She basically was just like, it was my fault. Well, you should have been on the bus that day. And I don't know. She just basically shrugged me off, it's a good thing he could have killed you. Good thing you didn't get killed. If I were you, I wouldn't be walking home from school. You're supposed to be riding the bus. This could have ended badly for you. That was kind of the attitude that I got. Nothing ever came of it. I don't know what ever happened to that guy. I don't know. I lived with so much guilt after that for not telling a counselor at school, because I believe this man stalked me. Not, what I'm saying? Maybe not for days at a time, but that day he saw me by myself. And I often wondered, did he do this to somebody else? If I told maybe I could have prevented someone else from being abducted. And who knows, he may have killed the other, someone else. But for me, I believe he let me go because I literally told him, I don't know what your plan is with me, but I just want you to know that you could kill me and my family won't care. They're not looking for me. You're not going to get in any trouble because they don't care. And that's where my mind was at that point. I felt like the signs were there that I was being abused, the wearing all black, the cutting on myself, and, my journal and things that I was doing, the running away, that should have sent up red flags for somebody, but they weren't listening. And I felt very unloved and very unheard and unseen. The only person that saw me was, my dad, who saw me as a sexual object. When I was being abused by my dad, my mind would go to another place. I oftentimes, because it had to have been an outer body experience. I could not be myself and endure what he was doing to me. Same thing when I was abducted. I was mentally in another place, and I almost felt like at that point I had just waved the white flag and was just like, I just completely give up, because I kind of felt like I was unwanted when I was born because, my grandparents had to raise me. And then I go right into this. I found myself questioning, if God is so real, then why is he allowing this to happen to me? I was very aware of what was going on with me. For the first part, I thought maybe it was normal and maybe all dads did this. But then my best friend in middle school was raised by her father. He was a single father, and I saw their relationship, and that's when the light bulb went off, and I said, what's happening to me is not normal. Not only does it feel bad, but I see that this is not normal. And then the relationship I had with my uncle wasn't that way either. So I had those things letting me know that but I wondered, why was I being punished? What did I do so bad? Why did you guys even have me? Why was I even born if you're just going to, degrade me and abuse me and just throw me away? Why even bring me into this world? I often ask myself that question. There was a time after this happened, I went to stay with my aunt in Michigan, which is where my dad had went. And I remember speaking with her. She had a very bad childhood herself. And she told me when I got off that plane that I could be anybody I wanted to be. I could change my name if I wanted to, because I was there on a vacation. And I don't know why, but that kind of stuck with me after the situation with my dad. And I was able to confront him about it because, I did finally tell a caseworker and try to get him in trouble. Of course, he ran from the law and everything. I remember that when it was done and over with and he couldn't hurt me anymore, that I just said I didn't want to be Sharon anymore. And I don't go by Sharon with anything unless it's like a legal thing, here or whatever. I don't know. Changing my name, which is not legally changed, but I go by something different, helped me a lot because Sharon was tired. She was a little girl who was not heard. She wasn't seen. She was abused and then thrown away. But Chappelle is strong and she has a voice, and she's not going to let her abuser win, and she's not going to let what happened to her as a child define her. It was almost my way of letting Sharon rest and saying that it's okay. I find myself still kind of youthful. I don't think I had a childhood. I believe I was robbed of my childhood. Do I have mental illness from what happened? I suffer from major depression disorder, severe anxiety. I get really, really anxious. Post-traumatic stress disorder from the things that I had endured. That kind of spilled over into my parenting because I'm kind of a helicopter mom. I'm worried. I don't really let my kids go spend the night anywhere. Definitely would never let them walk to or from school. And part of that is sad, and it's kind of like maybe I should let them experience life. But then the other part of me is just like, I know how cruel and evil this world can be. And I don't ever want my children to experience that. I don't think anybody's children should experience that. But I'm strong now. And when I say that I'm strong, it still kind of hurts me. Deep inside of me, little Sharon is still there, I don't think that she ever was heard. I think doing this is giving her a voice and letting her speak, because I've never spoke about this publicly. I live with a lot of guilt because I wondered if my dad had ever did this to any of my other siblings that he had, after me. And I don't know if I'll ever know that truth. I know I'm not his only victim, but that's their story to tell. I'm still a work in progress. When I had alerted a counselor at school and told them what was going on, he was notified of what was going on, and he spoke to me on the phone and said, if you believe I did these things to you, then by all means do whatever it is you feel like you need to do. You're living in a fantasy world. Nobody is going to believe you. I'm a grown man. If you think that this happened, it was almost like he was gaslighting me. And I remember before I hung up the phone, I knew, it pissed me off that he was saying this to me. Because again, I'm going, how dare you do that? You know what I'm saying? I went back to that moment when he had tried to discipline me, and I'm like, what? I said, let me make this clear to you, Gilbert. I don't believe these things happened to me. These things did happen to me. I lived them, and you're sick, and I hope that you get help. I said, but one thing for sure, you will never, ever see me again. And I hung up that phone on him. And that was it. That was the end of it. He never got in trouble for what he did to me. I know he ran. I don't know if Child Protective Services really made that much of an effort, since he didn't live in the same state that the abuse initiated at, or whatever. I don't know. I always say I fell through the cracks of Child Protective Services, but it is what it is. Nothing we can do to change it. Now, I wanted to do this because if by chance there are some other little Sharons out there that are watching this, I hope that they find their voice. Just find your voice and just know that your life doesn't have to be that way. I know it can be scary because you don't know what will happen if you choose to use your voice, but find your voice. Use your voice, because you deserve the best life possible. You deserve to be heard and loved, and you don't deserve to be hurt, especially not by the people who are supposed to protect you. I kind of feel like part of my success story is that when I came back from Michigan, I did get pregnant at a very young age. I was 14 when I had my oldest son. Then I had my second son at 16. So I had 2 children, no family support. So to speak, I did it on my own. I was able to go out and sometimes work 2 and 3 jobs and make a way to take care of my children. I was very fortunate that I met a wonderful woman who chose me, and she chose to love me and to adopt me and bring me into her family unit. So I was very blessed for that. I did have her. And my godmother, on September 2021, September 19th, which is my oldest son's birthday, I was planning for my son's birthday party. I was making reservations on the phone when I was told that he had been tragically killed in a work-related accident. And I think if I hold any resentment, I want to know why my dad can still walk this earth, but was taken. I think that I'm still not over that. I don't understand why such an amazing person was taken from me, but an evil man is still walking around living his best life. It's not fair. So despite everything that I was going through, I was able to overcome and just push through. My kids saved me. I believe it without a shadow of a doubt. And I believe that, if I can do it, I think that anybody can do it.